She said it was just a work trip. A few days away, a simple business conference, nothing unusual, just like every other time. I watched her pack her bags, that familiar, warm smile on her face, telling me she'd be back soon. But something was different this time, something in the way she laughed, a little too quick, a little too hollow. I tried to shake it off, convinced I was overthinking, but over the past few weeks, small signs kept creeping in. She was on her phone constantly, slipping into the next room for work calls and brushing off my questions with that easy laugh of hers. And every time I asked, I got the same line. It's just work, nothing to worry about. But still, that gnawing feeling wouldn't go away. The night before she left, I couldn't help but notice how careful she was, checking and rechecking her phone, glancing over her shoulder, almost as if she were hiding something. I told myself not to dig, not to question it. But after she left, I found myself standing in the quiet of our empty home, every little inconsistency replaying in my mind. The missing hotel confirmation, the gaps in her itinerary, her nervous, half-hidden glances. I had to know. I wasn't looking for trouble, but I needed to know the truth. So, I decided to dig deeper. I started with her messages, tracing every vague answer and half-hearted excuse she'd given. Each time I uncovered a new detail, my heart raced faster, my worst fears taking shape. The calls to unknown numbers, the messages sent at odd hours, each one more suspicious than the last. The lies were adding up, and the truth I was finding was more painful than anything I could have imagined. By the time I pieced everything together, it was clear. This wasn't just a work trip. This was betrayal, the kind that cuts deeper than any wound. The woman I trusted, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had been hiding a life I'd never seen coming. And with every new discovery, every hidden detail, I felt my world collapse, the love I thought was unbreakable shattering into pieces right before my eyes. Our life together always felt so predictable, so stable, like we had it all figured out. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and that kind of trust you think nothing can ever shake. I remember the way she'd always laugh and roll her eyes at my little quirks, and I'd do the same. We were partners through and through. But looking back now, I can't help but see those little moments differently, like hints I missed or signs I didn't want to see. It started with small things, things that seemed trivial at first. She began working late, coming home hours after she usually would. She'd brush it off with a quick excuse, saying, "There's just a big project, you know how it is." At first, I didn't think much of it. I trusted her, believed in us. But then, those late nights turned into weekends spent catching up on work. Each time she'd leave, she'd give me that same practice smile, assuring me it was just temporary. But the real change happened when her phone became glued to her hand. She started turning away when she'd text, lowering her voice when I walked into the room. She'd say it was work, that she needed to focus. Yet, the more she tried to convince me, the more something felt wrong. It was like this invisible wall had gone up between us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding behind it. I remember the night she told me about the work trip. She was a little too excited, a little too eager. She said it was a great career opportunity, that she'd be back in a few days, and there was nothing to worry about. She tried to reassure me, but her words only fed that nagging feeling in my gut. I'd never felt this way before, this sinking doubt that something I trusted was slipping away. I could tell she noticed me watching her a little closer that night, her face hardening just slightly, like she was trying to keep something in. As I watched her pack, every gesture, every glance, felt like it was hiding something. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew. I could feel the truth, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to shatter everything we had. It all started to unravel the night she left for her work trip. As soon as she walked out the door, a strange emptiness filled the room, like some part of her had taken the air with her. I couldn't shake the feeling, so I did something I never thought I would. I picked up her tablet. We had always respected each other's privacy, but this time, curiosity and suspicion got the better of me. Her messages were synced, just sitting there in plain sight, and the first text I saw was enough to make my heart pound. A message she'd sent right after leaving. On my way, can't wait to see you. My mind spun. I read that line again and again, hoping there was some logical explanation, some innocent meaning I was missing. But as I scrolled through the thread, each message twisted the knife a little deeper. They weren't about work. They were about plans, secrets, intimate moments she'd shared with someone else, a person I never even knew existed in her life. Each word felt like a new betrayal, a reminder that the woman I thought I knew had been slipping away right in front of me. I sat there, stunned, not sure whether to laugh, scream, or cry. All those late nights, those phone calls, those nervous glances, they suddenly made sense in the worst way possible. I'd given her the benefit of the doubt, told myself it was all in my head, but here was the truth staring back at me, cold and undeniable. I couldn't stop reading, even though every line cut deeper. The messages revealed plans she'd made, places she'd gone, excuses she'd given me to cover up her time with him. The painful details painted a clear picture of every lie she'd told me. And the worst part? These and her words, like this was just a normal part of her life, while I'd been in the dark the whole time, believing in us, in our commitment. As I sat there, I felt a wave of anger, sadness, and disbelief wash over me. Everything I thought I knew, everything I'd built my life around, was shattered in an instant. The betrayal was more than just another affair. It was a knife to the heart of the trust and love we'd shared. Voice over script, planning the revenge, 400 words. The betrayal left a raw, gaping wound in me, but as the hours passed, that pain transformed into something else, resolve. I'd been blindsided, humiliated, taken for a fool. But now I was done being the victim. If she thought she could just walk back into our home and continue living this double life, she had another thing coming. I was going to show her what it felt like to be betrayed, blindsided, and broken. I didn't want to just confront her. I wanted her to feel the same shock I'd felt the moment I discovered her lies. So, I started planning. Every detail had to be perfect. I knew her routines, her habits, every step she'd taken to cover up her tracks, and I was going to turn them against her. My first move was gathering proof. Every message, every call log, every tiny detail that painted a clear picture of her deceit. I wanted to be ready when the time came, ready to lay out her betrayal in a way she couldn't deny or twist. Then, I started thinking about how I'd deliver my revenge. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation where she could twist the story, where she could somehow turn the tables on me. No, this had to be calculated, undeniable, something she'd feel the full impact of, and something she'd never forget. I imagined the look on her face, that shock, the realization as the truth hit her. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to have the ground ripped out from under her, just like she'd done to me. I decided to expose her secret in the most public, undeniable way possible. She had taken something pure, something we'd built together, and torn it apart with lies. Now, I was going to take away the illusion she'd so carefully crafted. I rehearsed every word, every step, making sure there'd be no way for her to talk her way out of it. This wasn't just about getting even, it was about reclaiming my dignity, showing her that I wasn't some pawn in her twisted game. I was done being her fool, and soon, she'd realize just how much she had underestimated me. When the moment finally came, she'd feel the weight of every lie, every betrayal. And I'd be there to watch it all unfold. The day finally arrived. I'd spent hours preparing, rehearsing every word, every expression, every detail to make sure I'd be calm and composed. When she walked through the door, I could see the fake warmth in her eyes, the casual smile she used whenever she thought she had me fooled. But this time, I was ready. As she set down her bags, I took a deep breath and told her we needed to talk. Her face shifted, just for a moment, but enough to show she knew something was wrong. She asked what was going on, her voice carrying that slight edge of defensiveness I'd grown to recognize. I didn't bother with small talk. I simply pulled out my phone, showing her the messages, the plans, the evidence of every lie she'd told. Her face went pale as she scrolled through each damning text, each call log, each piece of proof that laid out her betrayal in black and white. I watched as the horror spread across her face, the shock of being exposed hitting her in waves. She tried to explain, to weave another story, but this time I wasn't buying it. Every excuse, every half-hearted apology sounded hollow, weak. Then I told her the part she didn't expect. I'd already made plans. Her friends, her family, everyone who thought she was still the loyal partner she pretended to be, they all knew. The truth wasn't just between us, it was out in the open, and she couldn't run from it anymore. Her lies had finally caught up to her. As I spoke, I could see the realization sink in. She knew the life she'd so carefully built was crumbling before her eyes. The confidence she once held was gone, replaced by a desperate, pleading look. She begged, but there was no coming back. I'd given her trust, loyalty, everything, and she'd thrown it all away. Finally, I stood up, my voice steady as I told her to leave. There was no yelling, no dramatic scene, just a quiet finality that let her know it was over. Watching her walk out that door, knowing she'd never come back, I felt a weight lift. She thought she could shatter my life and walk away untouched. But now, as she faced the ruins of her own lies, I knew she'd finally felt a piece of the pain she'd caused.